The first time I opened my sister's apartment door, I realized I had been lying to myself about who she had become. I told myself I was overreacting and that every family has messy phases and that love means patience. Then I saw dead animals in plastic bags and her kids sleeping on one mattress in a room filled with trash. And in that moment, I understood that silence would make me just as guilty as she was. I am the older sibling, and for most of our lives, I was the one who fixed things. I paid late bills, I drove her to appointments, I explained away her missed work and her missed parenting. I told everyone she was just going through a rough patch and needed time and support. That lie was comfortable because the truth would have required me to act. My sister was not always like this, and that is what still breaks me. She used to be the loud laugh in every room, the one who loved kids, the one who babysat everyone else. When she got pregnant young, we all panicked, but she swore motherhood would ground her. For a while it looked like she was right. The first child changed her in small ways at first. She stayed home more, she cooked simple meals, she took photos of tiny socks, and posted about blessings. The second child came quickly after, and the cracks began to show. Money got tighter, sleep got shorter, and her smile started looking forced. By the time the third child was born, the house was already starting to smell wrong. Not just dirty, but sour, like old food and wet clothes that never dried. I mentioned it once, and she snapped at me saying I was judging her. I apologized because that was easier than pressing the issue. Every visit after that came with a new excuse. She was tired, she was depressed, the kids were sick, the car broke down. I brought groceries, I cleaned dishes, I took the kids to the park. I left each time feeling like I had put a bandage on a wound that needed stitches. The animals came later, and that was when my unease turned into fear. She started taking in strays, saying she could not stand to see them suffer. Cats at first, then dogs, then a rabbit she found on the side of the road. She promised she would find them homes, but none ever left. The apartment shrunk around them. Cages stacked in corners, litter boxes overflowed, and the smell became impossible to ignore. The kids stopped playing on the floor because there was no floor left. They ate sitting on the bed because the table was buried. I remember the day I found the first dead animal. It was a small dog wrapped in a grocery bag and hidden behind the couch. She said it had been sick and she had not known what to do. She asked me not to tell anyone, and I heard panic in her voice. That night, I did not sleep. I kept seeing the kids' faces, the way they watched everything silently. They had learned to be quiet, to take up as little space as possible. Children should not know how to do that. I tried talking to her again the next morning. I told her she needed help, that this was not safe, that the kids deserved better. She cried and promised she would clean up and rehome the animals. I wanted to believe her because the alternative felt like betrayal. Weeks passed and nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. Trash bags piled up because she said the dumpster was too far. The kids started sleeping all together in one room because the others were full. I brought up child services gently. I said maybe they could help with resources or support. Her face changed instantly, and she told me if I ever did that she would never forgive me. She said they would take her kids and ruin their lives. That threat worked for a while. I told myself family loyalty mattered more than rules. I told myself love meant protecting her from a system that did not understand. I told myself the kids were still fed, and that had to count for something. The turning point came on a random afternoon. I stopped by unannounced because I had a bad feeling. The door was unlocked and the apartment was silent in a way that felt wrong. I found the kids asleep in the same room, surrounded by trash and flies. There were 2 more dead animals this time. One in the bathroom, one in the closet. The air was heavy, and I felt sick standing there. I realized that waiting any longer would be choosing her over them. Calling CPS was the hardest thing I have ever done. My hands shook and my voice kept cracking. I told the truth even when it made me sound like a villain. I hung up and sat in my car, crying for an hour. When they came to check, I was not there. My sister called me screaming, asking if I had done this. I did not deny it, and the silence after that was worse than the yelling. She told me I was dead to her. CPS stayed longer than I expected. They took notes, they took photos, they asked questions. I waited for the call that said the kids were being removed. Instead, I got a call that left me numb. They said the kids were not in immediate danger. They said the home was messy, but not unlivable. They gave her a list of things to improve and closed the case. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My sister used that decision like a weapon. She told everyone CPS had cleared her. She told me I had tried to destroy her family for nothing. She cut me off completely, and I lost contact with the kids. For months, I checked social media like an addict. I looked for signs that things had improved. Instead, I saw posts about new pets and complaints about haters. I saw smiles that felt like a performance. 2 years passed, and the guilt never left. I wondered if I had done enough or if I had done it wrong. I wondered if I should have called again or fought harder. I wondered if love sometimes requires becoming the villain. Then last week I got a message from a mutual friend. She told me the kids were no longer in the apartment. She told me they were living in a car now. And she told me something else that made my stomach turn. My sister was trying to get pregnant again. When I heard they were living in a car, I felt something inside me break that I did not know was still holding. I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone, reading the same message over and over. My mind tried to reject it because accepting it meant everything I feared had come true. I thought about those kids curled up together breathing cold air instead of rotting trash. And I realized time had not protected them, it had only made everything worse. I reached out to my sister after 2 years of silence. I told myself I was doing it for the kids, not for closure, not for forgiveness. When she finally responded, her message was calm, almost cheerful. She said they were just between places and that I was overreacting again. She told me living in a car was temporary. She said the kids thought it was an adventure. She said lots of families do van life now like it was a trend. The way she minimized it made me feel like I was talking to a stranger wearing her face. I asked where they were sleeping. She said a parking lot near a grocery store because it felt safe. She said they had blankets and snacks, and that was enough. I thought about winter nights and summer heat and wanted to scream. I asked why she had lost the apartment. She blamed rent prices, landlords, the economy. She never mentioned the warnings or the animals or the smell. In her version of events, nothing was ever her fault. Then she said something that chilled me. She said once she had another baby, things would stabilize. She said babies bring assistance, support, donations. She said this time she would do it right. I felt my hands shake reading that. These kids were sleeping in a car, and she was planning another pregnancy. Not as a dream, not as a hope, but as a strategy. I realized she did not see children as people, she saw them as solutions. I told her the kids needed stability, not another sibling. She accused me of shaming her body and her choices. She said I had always thought I was better than her. The conversation turned toxic in seconds. She told me CPS had failed her. She said they did not help when she needed them. She said if they had taken the kids, maybe things would be better. That sentence haunted me because it sounded like regret mixed with resentment. I asked if the kids were going to school. She said homeschooling was more flexible. When I asked for details, she changed the subject. I could feel the same old patterns slipping back into place. That night, I could not stop thinking about the first call. I remembered how CPS had said the kids were not in immediate danger. I remembered wondering what immediate danger even meant. Because living like that felt dangerous in ways that do not show up on checklists. I called CPS again the next morning. This time I told them everything about the car, about the pregnancy, about the history. The woman on the phone sounded concerned but cautious. She told me they would log the information. Days passed with no update. I started having dreams about the kids crying without sound. I kept checking my phone expecting bad news or no news at all. The waiting felt like punishment for caring. Then my sister posted photos online. The kids smiling in the back seat wrapped in blankets. A caption about family strength and haters. People praised her resilience and called her a warrior. I wanted to comment, I wanted to scream the truth. But I knew doing that would only make me look like the villain again. The internet loves a struggling mother and hates a critical relative. I stayed silent and felt sick. A week later, CPS called me back. They said they had done a welfare check. They said the kids were clean and fed. They said living in a car did not automatically mean neglect. I asked about school. They said they would follow up. I asked about another pregnancy. They said intent was not action. I hung up and cried. I felt like I was trapped in a loop where logic did not matter. Where every red flag was just a shade of gray. Where the kids were always almost in danger, but never enough. I tried reaching out to the kids' father. He had been in and out of their lives since the beginning. When he answered, he sounded tired and defeated. He said he could not take them, he was barely stable himself. He told me he had called CPS too. He told me they had told him the same things. He told me he felt like he had failed them. Hearing that made me feel less alone and more hopeless. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, photos, dates, times. I did not know what I would do with it, but I needed proof. Because memories are easy to dismiss, evidence is not. Then one night, I got a call from my sister. Her voice was soft, almost sweet. She told me she was late on her period. She told me she hoped this one would stick. I asked her where the kids were while she took the test. She laughed and said in the car, watching a movie on her phone. That image burned into my brain. She told me if I loved her, I would be happy. She told me this baby would fix everything. She told me I needed to stop living in the past. I realized she truly believed that. After we hung up, I sat in silence. I thought about the first time I had ever held her oldest child. I thought about promises I had made to protect them, and I knew I was running out of time. The next morning, I opened my laptop. I started researching legal options, emergency custody, anything. I did not know if I had a case, but I had to try. Because doing nothing was no longer an option. That was when I found something that changed everything. A detail I had missed 2 years ago. A report that had never been followed up on. And if it was true, it meant the kids had been in danger all along. The report I found was buried in an old email chain from 2 years ago, and I almost missed it. It was a single line mentioning animal control being contacted by a neighbor. At the time, I had assumed it went nowhere because no one ever followed up with me. Now reading it again, my chest tightened because that call had been about dead animals. I called the number listed on the report. I did not expect anyone to remember. But the woman who answered pulled the file almost immediately. She spoke slowly, like she was choosing her words carefully. She told me officers had visited the apartment back then. She told me they had found multiple decomposing animals. She told me they had issued a warning and forwarded concerns to CPS. Then she went quiet and asked if the children were safe now. That question hit me harder than any accusation. I told her the truth, that they were living in a car, that their mother was trying to get pregnant again, that CPS had closed the case twice. She exhaled slowly and told me something I had never heard before. She said their report had been marked as urgent. She said it was supposed to trigger a joint follow-up. She said she did not know why that never happened. For the first time in 2 years, I felt anger instead of guilt. Not at my sister, not at myself, but at a system that let files sit while kids learned to sleep curled around trash and seatbelts. I asked her what I could do. She told me to request records. She told me to ask for supervisors. She told me to put everything in writing. She told me off the record that I was right to be worried. I spent the entire day making calls. I asked for case numbers, names, dates, anything. Most people sounded defensive, some sounded tired. A few sounded genuinely alarmed when I described the car. One supervisor told me something that made my blood run cold. She said the kids had been labeled resilient. She said that often worked against them, because resilient children are seen as coping even when they should not have to. I thought about the way they stayed quiet, the way they learned not to ask for things, the way they smiled on command, and I realized their survival skills had been used as evidence against them. I asked if anyone had actually spoken to the kids alone. There was a pause. She said not recently. She said it was hard with unstable housing. That night, I could not sit still. I drove past the grocery store parking lot my sister had mentioned. I did not plan to confront her, I just needed to see. I parked at a distance and waited. After an hour, I saw the car. Fogged windows, dim light from a phone. I recognized the stickers on the back. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to grip the steering wheel. I watched as one of the kids sat up and pressed their face to the glass. They looked around like they were making sure no one was watching. Then they lay back down. That small movement broke something in me. I did not approach. I did not call out. I drove away crying so hard I had to pull over. Because I knew if I acted on emotion, I might ruin everything. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint. I attached screenshots, reports, dates, photos. I used words like pattern and escalation and risk. I asked for an emergency review. Within hours, I got a call back. This time the tone was different. They asked detailed questions. They asked why I had not been contacted before. They asked if I was willing to speak to a legal team. I said yes without hesitation. I did not care if my sister never forgave me. I did not care if the family turned on me. I only cared that someone was finally listening. When my sister found out, she exploded. She left me voicemails, screaming, crying, laughing. She accused me of stalking her. She said I wanted her kids because I could not have my own. That one hurt, even though it was not true. She posted online again, this time about betrayal and snakes in the family. People commented telling her to cut me off. Some told her to protect her kids from me. Reading that felt like being gaslit by strangers. Then something unexpected happened. One of the kids told a teacher about sleeping in the car. A mandatory report was filed. Suddenly, it was no longer just my word. CPS did another check. This time they brought a supervisor. This time they asked the kids questions separately. This time they stayed longer. I was not there, but I got the call later. They told me temporary placement was being considered. They told me they were looking for kinship options. They asked if I would be willing to help. I said yes before they finished the sentence. My heart was pounding. For the first time, I felt hope instead of dread. But that hope came with fear. Because my sister was pregnant. She confirmed it in a message sent at midnight. She said they could not take her kids now. She said a pregnant mother needed support, not punishment. She said I had gone too far. The caseworker told me pregnancy complicated things. It made timelines slower. It made decisions heavier. It made everything more political. Days turned into weeks. The kids stayed with my sister, but under monitoring. She was required to park in designated areas. She was given vouchers and resources. She complained constantly that they were controlling her. I met with a lawyer. They told me emergency custody was possible but risky. They told me family cases are never clean. They told me I needed to be prepared to lose people. I thought about holidays, birthdays, memories. I thought about being labeled the one who broke the family. Then I thought about that child pressing their face to the window. And I signed the papers. The last time I saw my sister in person was at a mediation meeting. She looked smaller, angry, defensive. She told me I had ruined her life. She told me she would never let me see the baby. I did not argue. I just told her I loved the kids. She looked at me like I had spoken a foreign language. The meeting ended without resolution. But as we walked out, the caseworker pulled me aside. She told me off the record that the evidence was strong. She told me to be ready. That night, I got a call I had been waiting for and dreading at the same time. They told me to come get the kids. They told me it was temporary. They told me to bring car seats and clothes. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with another message. It was from my sister. It was one sentence. You think you won, but you have no idea what comes next. I picked up the kids in the middle of the night because CPS said less drama was better. They came out carrying plastic bags with their clothes tied in knots. No toys, no pillows, no complaints. They just looked at me like they were waiting for instructions. The oldest asked if this was a sleepover. I said yes because I did not know what else to say. The middle one asked if their mom was mad. The youngest fell asleep before we left the parking lot. That drive home felt longer than any road trip I had ever taken. I kept checking the rearview mirror to make sure they were still there. They stayed quiet the whole time. Like noise might make this temporary kindness disappear. When we got to my place, they stood in the living room, not touching anything. I told them they could sit anywhere. They looked at each other like they needed permission. That moment hurt more than finding them in the car. I made food and put blankets on the couch. The oldest asked if they were allowed to eat seconds. I said yes, as many as you want. They ate slowly like they were afraid it would be taken away. That night, none of them slept in their own space. They all curled up together on one couch. Even though I had beds ready. Trauma does not understand comfort right away. The next morning, CPS came by. They asked questions, took notes, looked around. They said the placement was temporary until court. They said my sister was furious and threatening legal action. They said I should prepare for pushback. Pushback came fast. Family members started calling, telling me I had gone too far. They said I should have helped her, not exposed her. They said kids belong with their mother no matter what. I asked them where they had been when the kids slept in a car. My sister posted again. This time photos of her ultrasound. A caption about new beginnings and toxic people. People congratulated her and told her she was strong. No one asked about the 3 kids she no longer had. Court was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Those 2 weeks changed everything. The kids started sleeping separately. They started asking for snacks and extra blankets. They started laughing louder than I had ever heard. The oldest asked me one night if this was forever. I told them I did not know. They nodded like that was an answer they were used to. Children learn early not to expect certainty. My sister was allowed supervised visits. The first one was rough. She cried loudly, hugged them too tight. She told them they would be home soon. The caseworker corrected her, and she glared at me. After that visit, the kids were quiet for hours. The middle one asked if they had done something wrong. I told them no over and over until they believed me. I was angry at a system that allowed false hope. At court, my sister argued that I had planned this. She said I wanted her kids. She said I was punishing her for being poor. Her lawyer focused on intent, not impact. Then the reports came out. Animal control, CPS, history, school absences. Photos of the car, living situation. Suddenly the story changed. The judge asked why another pregnancy had been planned. My sister said she needed joy. The judge asked who would care for the kids if things got hard again. She did not answer. Temporary custody was extended. The room went silent. My sister looked at me like I had killed something sacred. I looked at the kids and tried not to cry. After court, she cornered me in the hallway. She told me I had stolen her life. She told me I would pay for this. She told me the baby would hate me before it was born. I went home shaking. That night, I dreamed of the parking lot, of fogged windows and small faces. I woke up knowing this was far from over. Weeks later, a social worker pulled me aside. She told me something she was not supposed to. My sister had missed multiple prenatal appointments. She had been parking in unsafe areas again. The baby was now considered at risk. I asked what that meant. She said it meant the pattern was repeating. She said sometimes people do not change, they just shift the damage. That sentence sat heavy in my chest. Family pressure got worse. Some cut me off completely. Others pretended nothing had happened. I learned who valued peace over safety. The kids started therapy. The therapist told me they showed signs of chronic neglect. Not abuse in the way people expect, but absence, inconsistency, instability. One day, the oldest said something that stopped me cold. They said living in the car was better than the trash, because at least they could see the sky. I had to leave the room to breathe. As months passed, the question changed. It was no longer about temporary placement. It was about permanency, about what was best for the kids long term. My sister announced the gender of the baby online. Pink balloons and smiles. Comments full of hearts. I wondered if anyone knew or cared what it cost. CPS scheduled another hearing. This one would decide everything. Reunification or removal. Temporary or permanent. The night before that hearing, the oldest crawled into my bed. They asked if they could stay with me even if mom got better. They asked if love could mean living somewhere else. I did not have an easy answer. All I knew was that tomorrow someone would decide their future. And no matter what the judge ruled, someone would walk away broken. The courtroom was quiet in a way that felt heavy, like everyone was afraid to breathe. My sister sat with one hand on her stomach and one hand clenched around a tissue. The kids sat beside me, holding each other like they had practiced for this moment. I realized then that no matter the outcome, childhood had already asked too much of them. The judge spoke slowly, reading from a stack of papers that represented years of missed chances. He talked about patterns, not promises. He talked about stability, not intentions. He talked about how love without safety is still harm. When he granted me permanent custody, the room did not explode. There was no crying, no cheering, no relief. Just a long silence followed by my sister standing up and walking out. She did not look back once. The kids did not react at first. Then the middle one asked if this meant they could stay in one school. The oldest asked if they could paint their room. The youngest asked if this was home. I answered yes to all of it and felt my chest tighten. My sister gave birth 2 months later. The baby was taken into care immediately. People called it tragic and unfair. I called it predictable. Family members finally stopped calling. Some quietly admitted they had been wrong. Others never spoke to me again. I learned that doing the right thing does not always look like a victory. The kids still have nightmares. They still hoard snacks. They still ask before sitting on the couch. Healing is slow and non-linear and demanding. Sometimes I wonder if I did enough or too much. If I should have acted earlier or differently. If blood should have meant silence. If love should have meant loyalty instead of intervention. My sister sends messages sometimes. She says I stole her life. She says the system failed her. She never asks about the kids. So here is the question I still sit with. If protecting children means destroying an adult you love, is that still the right thing to do? Or is there a line where responsibility should have ended? What would you have done if this was your family?